Beaumont's Travel Journal, May 28th to May 31st. We set out on our 3-day journey to Southfork, hoping to seal off this Hellpit and put an end to the hungry dead terrorising the south end of the county. The Johnson brothers we met in Alderville proved good company on the journey, though I must confess, they both seem a little green, and having seen firsthand the horrors of Brimstone County, I hope these chaps know what they are in for. The roads were calm and the weather good. As we travelled along the dusty trail, we met a cavalry officer from the 13th, who gave us a local update. It seemed the cavalry officer and some of his troops were returning from a fight with a pack of void things. They saw some of the troubles up ahead and warned us to avoid them. On the second day of our journey, we came to the old wooden bridge that arches across the rushing Cohen River. Despite the age of the bridge's rickety boards, it offered us a beautiful sight of nature, revitalising and refreshing our troubled minds. For just a few moments, Torinobu and I, along with the Johnson brothers, were able to forget the nightmarish reality besieging Brimstone County. We made camp at the foot of Southfork Mountains, having one last meal before setting out to seal the Hellpit.
Beaumont and Torinobu finally arrive at the mines in Southfork. The Johnson brothers, who they recruited in Alderville, follow closely behind, nervous of the horrors they have heard of within the dark depths of the mines around Brimstone. However, the promise of treasure and loot spurs them on. Right, boys, let's get to it and find this Hellpit. We probably shouldn't tarry around this place. Beaumont steps forward, holding the old lantern aloft as he leads the way, crossing the threshold of the Southfork mine. Torinobu follows closely behind, stepping up to the side of his companion.
Let us see what the darkness has in store for us this time.
Well, I doubt it's tea and biscuits, old boy. Come on, let's get a move on. Bill and Eric Johnson look at each other, exchanging nervous glances. They give each other the nod and follow on behind the samurai and gambler. Beaumont leads on, stepping into the darkness. He finds himself in a dark stone quarry. Overturned minecarts litter the floor with spilled dark stone chunks cast all about. Torinobu quickly follows, and the two men begin to scavenge the area for anything useful. Sensing valuable treasures to be found, Bill and Eric Johnson quickly follow up behind them. In the quarry they find a dark stone deposit. Shards of dark stone protrude from the walls here, giving the room a faint purple glow. Beaumont swings his pickaxe with all of his strength at the deposit of dark stone. He manages to shear off a few chunks of the valuable mineral, which he divides amongst the posse. Don't like keeping too much of that magic rock to myself, you know. I've seen bad things happen to people who carry too much of that around. As they continue to search for trinkets amongst the dark stone, Beaumont notices there is a mark scratched into the wall here. He recognizes it as a cipher used by the Scafford gang to hide stolen treasure. There may be hidden loot in this mine, stashed away by Colonel Scafford and his band of mutant outlaws. It is the Colonel's mark. The prospect of more loot is too great for the Johnson brothers to resist. While Torinobu and Beaumont continue to search the dark stone quarry, the Johnson brothers split up. One heads to the left, the other to the right, both in search of more treasure. Bill Johnson steps through the doorway to the left and finds himself in a mining room. A skeletal figure slumped against the passage wall seems to have scratched a warning into the stone.
Looks like this fella left a warning from the grave. Let's see, what does it say? Worms? Something about worms?
Too late. Bill Johnson doesn't notice the wriggling creature slithering its way across his boot and up his jeans towards the back of his neck. The wriggling feeling on his neck burns as the worms burrow into his skin and his mind. He begins to claw futilely at his neck, trying to get the little creature out. But it's too late, as his sanity quickly erodes and decays.
Get it off me! Get it out of me! Ah! Ah! Ah!
He collapses to the floor, a gibbering wreck, convulsing violently. As the mindworm wriggles its way free out of his ear, a trail of liquefied brain following it. Meanwhile, Eric Johnson finds himself entering a storage room. In the dim light, he sees a handful of men in black and red robes, rifles in their hands, and strange ornate masks cover their faces.
What the hell is going on here?
He says, shocked at the strange sight. The robed men turn towards him and begin to point their rifles in his direction. Eric barely has chance to get his hand on his pistol, fully expecting to be shot down by this firing squad. But before any of them can pull the trigger, Torinobu zips past him like a bolt of lightning. In a flash, his swords are in his hands, and a whirling dance of death begins. Silver steel sings, charcoal robes dance, and crimson blood spills. Three of the robed men lay dead at Torinobu's feet, hacked to pieces with expert precision. Final robed figure makes a maddened charge at Torinobu, attempting to club him with the butt end of his rifle, but the samurai easily deflects his sloppy attack. And then Eric Johnson, finally pulling his pistol free of its holster, takes aim and fires a shot to the chest of the crazy robed man, and he falls to the floor, gasping his last breaths of air.
Domo arigato, Johnson-san. I don't know what you just said, but I guess you're welcome anyway, Mr. Samurai Man.
Then, suddenly, Eric hears the terrified screams of his brother somewhere else in the mines. The acoustics make the sound confusing, and Eric, believing his brother to be off down a different passage, charges headlong into the unknown. He finds himself in an underground waterfall room. Roaring water cascades down from the chamber above, pooling before draining through holes in the floor. Cave fungus and moss grows here, making the rocky wet floor slick under his feet. In the darkness, away from Beaumont's lantern, Torinobu also gets confused as to where Eric Johnson went, and finds himself moving in the opposite direction. He passes through a doorway and finds himself at a track stop. Realizing he has hit a dead end, and with no sign of any of his compatriots nearby, he turns back to head the way he came. Beaumont is about to enter the mining room when he sees the corpse of Ben Johnson on the floor, thousands of wriggling, glowing, evil-looking worms feasting on what remains of his corpse. "Well, I'm not bloody going that way," he mutters to himself, and heads off down a different path. Meanwhile, in the waterfall room, Eric Johnson looks around in the dim light. At the far end of the chamber stands a tall set of iron doors with a thick chain draping onto the floor and running along the ground to the centre of the room. Then, in the darkness, away from the safe glow of Beaumont's oil lamp, he begins to hear voices. His mind begins to crack, and then, from the depths of the mine, he hears his brother calling his name.
Eric, they got me. They got me, brother. I need your help.
It's more than his fragile mind can take, and he snaps, running off into the depths of the mines, screaming and hollering. As Beaumont pushes on, the oil lantern flickering weakly in the darkness, he calls out for his companions. "Torinobu! Eric! Where the bloody hell have they all gotten to?" he says, confused at how they have all got separated so quickly. He finds himself in a rail tunnel. As he moves forward, nearing the end of the rail tunnel, he hears a clang from behind him. He spins round quickly to see a gang of bandits attempting to ambush him. "You no good bushwhacking dogs!" he exclaims as they level their pistols at him. Just then, from an adjoining tunnel, Eric Johnson comes screaming out of the darkness, raving about his brother and the end of days. The surprised bandits turn and open fire. A hail of lead from the three bandits smack into Eric Johnson, punching holes right through his body and leaving him on the floor like a hunk of Swiss cheese. "You murderous dogs," says Beaumont as he opens fire on the bandits. Two of them fall dead where they stand, while the third ducks for cover. Meanwhile, Torinobu makes his way through the storage room, attempting to regroup with the others. He uses his keen sense to make his way through the darkness, and then he hears the roaring gunfire in the distance and knows exactly where his compatriots are. He grits his teeth and breaks into a full sprint, attempting to catch up. The distracted bandits, engaged in a heavy firefight with Beaumont, never notices as the samurai races up the tunnel behind him, unsheathing his katanas, and with a whirling leap through the air, Torinobu brings his blade down squarely on the back of the bandit's neck, severing his head in one clean blow. "It's about bloody time you showed up. Where have you been?" Beaumont says, reloading his revolver.
I was searching for the Hellpit. Where are the Johnson brothers?
"Both dead, I'm afraid. One of them shot by these chaps, and the other, well, let's just say he's worm food now."
That is most saddening to hear.
"Yes, bloody ghastly business. But anyway, we must be pressing on now." Beaumont continues through the mines and finds himself at a switch curve. The rail tracks set into the dusty floor here split off in two directions, and there is a switch box to change their path. The rail switch, however, is the least of Beaumont's worries, as the stench of death hits him long before the lantern's light illuminates the room. Massacred bodies cover the ground, riddled with bullets, the site of a bloody outlaw shootout. The shootout massacre looks like it took place between the robed men and the bandits. Both must have been vying for control, each wanting it to be their own little hideout. Well, it seems now neither of them will get it. Beaumont searches the bodies for bullets or money or any other valuables. His cunning senses lead him to a strange artifact on one of the black-robed corpses, a small healing stone which pulsates with magical light. And then, in the dim half-light, he sees through one of the open doorways what they have been searching for: the Devil's Pit. In the middle of the room, a gaping pit has been torn into the floor. Hot wind and the screams of the damned wash up over Torinobu and Beaumont from the black depths of the Hellpit. "Torinobu," Beaumont calls, "I think I've found what we're looking for. Over here."
I am on my way.
Drawn to the sound of voices from the Hellpit emerge gibbering small creatures, tentacles writhing from their backs, their torsos little more than a toothy mouth, and their arms ending in twisted, distended claws. Stranglers from the void. As several of the ugly, gibbering little creatures crawl their way out and begin scampering towards Torinobu and Beaumont, something much larger follows them, a great, hulking, sickly green beast. Its arms, thick, writhing tentacles, and from its gigantic maw sprout a myriad of disgusting pink appendages, writhing at the air like 1,000 tongues. Finally, one last creature emerges, a dark, shadowy mass of muscle and fur, and claws, lots of claws, a night terror. Beaumont and Torinobu stand side by side as the mass of monstrosities come into view, scrambling around the corner, stomping and crawling across the bodies left by the shootout massacre. Beaumont takes a step back and pulls a stick of dynamite from his satchel. No, we won't be having any of this, he says as he lights the fuse and hurls it amidst the mass of monsters. The explosion blows apart all of the stranglers and leaves a massive wound in the side of the hulking Goliath. Seeing the Goliath wounded from the explosion, Torinobu charges forward. His blades gleam in the half-light and sing hungrily. The Goliath's blood splatters to the floor, its severed limbs leaving it to howl in impotent rage. With one final thrust through the top of its skull, the vile abomination stops moving and lies dead at Torinobu's feet. The two breathe a sigh of relief, believing the job well done, when suddenly, out of the darkness of the Hellpit, charges the night terror, its matted fur dark and its razor claws gleaming white in the half-light. It swipes at Torinobu with a fury and vengeance befitting a demon. Torinobu is knocked back by the brutal assault, but manages to fend off any serious long-term injuries. As the beast rears up for another attack, Beaumont opens fire on it. The bullets find their mark and leave the beast wounded and growling in anger. Torinobu quickly takes advantage of the distracted creature and slices it to pieces with 3 quick swings of his katana. "Well, looks like that's the last of the buggers," says Beaumont. The two men finally manage to seal off the endless pit from which the hellish creatures spill forth. Amidst the various corpses and treasures in the room, they find a small ancient statue that looks like it could be worth a fortune. "I think we could take this as payment for a job well done, don't you, Torinobu?"
Knowing that these demons are defeated is all the satisfaction I need.
"Very well. I'm quite satisfied with your heroics too. But I think we deserve a little bit of material reward as well, so I'll be taking this with us. Don't worry, I'll give you your share." Beaumont and Torinobu leave Southfork, hoping to get a stiff drink and a good sleep at the next town. Outside, Beaumont notices the dark clouds gathering in the sky overhead, and a crack of thunder splits the sky.
Beaumont's Travel Journal, May 31st to June 2nd, 1876. We left the Southfork mine, leaving simple grave markers nearby for the fallen Johnson brothers. A creeping dark has been following us since we left Southfork. It's an eclipse. Darkness befell the desert. It was no normal eclipse though. We seem to be trapped in darkness. It's as if the whole world was just cast into darkness. Yet, there is an uneasy feeling within the shadows. We continued on in the dark, and I feel bad luck has followed us on this journey. In the darkness of the eclipse, a storm broke out and didn't let up all day. We decided to head for Seto's Mill, a little way to the east, and hoped to dry out there. When we set up camp amidst the torrential downpour, we found more of our provisions had gone bad, and both Torinobu and I had bloody awful nightmares that night. I kept dreaming of that statue I found, crying tears of blood. Torinobu told me he had much the same dream. To my shock, when I pulled the stupid idol from my satchel, it was hot to the touch. Burned my fingers on it, it was that hot. I will be glad to sell the stupid thing to some tenderfoot when we reach Seto's Mill. The next day, we set out again, and thankfully the rain had ceased. But it didn't do much to abate the hunger Torinobu and I were feeling. To make matters worse, a pack of vicious void hounds had been tracking us for days without realizing, and now they found the opportunity to strike. Fortunately, we managed to fend them off and send the horrible things packing. After we escaped that attack, I found that damned statue glowing with heat again. I'd had enough, and hurled the cursed thing into some nearby undergrowth. Damn to the money. Torinobu was most pleased when I did so, reiterating his point about angry spirits. Despite yesterday's rain, we came across a wildfire raging in Scrog's Bog. How the sodden swamplands caught fire, I don't know, but they did, and before we knew it, we were surrounded by flames. Fortunately, Torinobu and I were able to find a shallow area of the fire, and jump through unscathed. Seto's Mill is just ahead, and hopefully our bad luck is behind us. Beaumont and Torinobu arrive at Seto's Mill and check into the hotel. As he unpacks his satchel, Beaumont finds, sitting in the leather bag, the idol he took from Southfork, glowing with heat. Torinobu, I think we have a problem.